Welcome back, America. You know, I search the internet, I search scholarship, I search wherever I can to find these anti-American groups that are out there. They're being birthed like rabbits. They're all over the place. They're heavily funded, many of them by our enemies. They have front groups. They have phony slogans and all the rest. In the Capital Research Center, Ryan Morrow, who's an investigative researcher of extremist groups for the Capital Research Center, they put out a fantastic document, Marching Towards Violence, the Domestic Anti-Israel Movement. And his point here, hold on a second, this has become an anti-American movement where they're trying to overthrow the United States of America. It's a study of the online rhetoric from major pro-Palestinian groups and activists in the United States before and after the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. And it concludes that the activist protests have morphed into an anti-American, anti-police movement. You know, it's like the fusion I've always talked about between the Islamists and the Marxists, with sharply radicalized rhetoric that advocates terrorism and sedition here in the United States of America. An analysis of thousands of social media posts by 496 of the most active so-called pro-Palestinian groups and activists, many of them connected to charities and nonprofits, quote unquote, found a 3,000% surge in calls for violence against the United States and a 186% increase in the use of anti-American and anti-police keywords and phrases since the Hamas-led terrorist attacks on October 7, 2023. What you are saying, Ryan Morrow, is we have now festering in the United States under this nomenclature of pro-Palestinian, enormous number of groups, enormous number of individuals, enormous amount of money seeking to undermine, usurp, and overthrow our own country, correct?
That's absolutely correct. We have done at the Capital Research Center a series of studies to prove this. So it's not just a description, we actually prove this. The first study, Marching Towards Violence, I looked at all of the organizations I could find that are involved in these anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protests across the country, and I identified over 150, including about 70 nonprofits, that are involved orchestrating these protests that are pro-terrorism. I mean, explicitly pro-Hamas, and in most cases, openly Marxist, anarchist, or Islamist, sort of like the Muslim Brotherhood network in the United States, and extremely anti-American. The other study, we did a few, but the most recent one, When Charities Betray America, we looked at the rhetoric of these groups for the 15 months before the October 7th attacks and the 15 months after. And that is where we found nearly a 200% increase in the amount of anti-American and anti-police rhetoric coming from about 500 of the top anti-Israel or so-called pro-Palestinian organizations and activists. So that's a 200% increase in anti-Americanism among this network after the October 7th attacks, including a 3,000% increase in the calls for violence on American soil, particularly towards police.
It's absolutely incredible. And you can see how so heavily focused it is, particularly in our metropolitan areas in our country. And the police are being battered. They have to keep coming out and dealing with it. But this is very important. I've been talking about this fusion of Marxism and Islamism, and this report proves it. This report proves it, that they have an alliance, even though, you know, Marxists oppose religion theoretically, and obviously Islamists are fundamentalists. But their focus is in overthrowing the West. And your point in this report is you didn't go into this report looking for a point. You went into this report and were looking. And you came in your investigation, you said, wait a minute, we can talk about Israel, we can talk about the Palestinians, we can talk about all that. These people are at war with us right here in the United States of America. Let me ask you something. You have these key findings. You have a thorough report that's been done. How many media organizations have said, wow, this is important? Let me go talk to Ryan.
Just a few that are already pro-Israel in nature. The mainstream media has not really reached out to us. And amazingly, one of the other findings of the first report, Marching Towards Violence, that I did was that I read just about every single mainstream media news report about these groups. And with the exception of just a handful of occasions, none, when mentioning one of these protesting groups, mention that they are pro-Hamas or Hamas connected or supportive of the Chinese government, the Iranian government, the Russian government, just a complete absence of context. So readers would think that these are reputable civil rights organizations that are worth trusting and respecting, instead of knowing that these are terrorism apologists who are more loyal to foreign adversaries of the United States than they are to the United States itself. In fact, most of these groups refer to the United States as Turtle Island, which is essentially the equivalent of when they say Israel is Palestine. When they say America is Turtle Island, what they're saying is that the United States does not deserve to exist, because that's the term that they believe Native Americans referred to North America as before the United States existed.
All right, let's pursue this when you come back, because we do have an enemy within. That's why they don't want us to use the phrase, and this is certainly a big part of it.